Good evening, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen in the gallery and those listening at home. Please be seated while Councillor Dewhurst delivers the blessing. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. We gather here today as humble servants seeking your guidance and wisdom as we embark on a new journey and do our best for our community. We come before you acknowledging that we are amidst times of challenge and change. We recognise that our beloved city, our nation, indeed the world grapple with the complexities and pains of conflict, loss and division. As we deliberate and make decisions in this council this meeting, may our minds be clear, our hearts be open and our spirits be attuned to the welfare of all whom we serve. May our work be a testament to our guidance, serving as a beacon of hope and unity for the city and for the world. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst. I'll begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. It is now 7:01. I declare the meeting open. Announcement of visitors. Welcome former Mayor Mrs Olwen Searle, who's in the gallery tonight. Thank you, Mrs Searle. Disclaimer, members of the public are cautioned against taking any action on council decisions on items in which they may have an interest until such time as they have seen a copy of the minutes of the meeting or have been advised in writing by city staff. Thank you. Have a record of attendance. We are all here with Councillor Adams joining us online. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillor Lloyd, you have a disclosure of interest? Yes, do we?
For 13.4.
I'll read it out.
Impartiality.
Thanks. I can read it out, Councillor. We've got it there? Okay, Councillor Lloyd, if you like to, yes, item number, go ahead.
13.4, I just declare an interest that my husband is a part of that.
Okay, thank you. You'll still be able to vote on that item. Thank you. Announcements of the presiding member. First of all, I'd like to offer our condolences to our neighbours at the City of Kalamunda on the passing of their CEO, Mrs Rhonda Hardy, who passed away on Monday. And we expect, express our well wishes and sympathies to the councillors, family and staff and residents, of course, of Kalamunda. On a brighter note, it was great to see the behind-the-scenes team at the City of Gosnells gain recognition for excellence in innovation and asset management at the recent Institute of Public Works Engineering Australasia Awards ceremony. So congratulations to Greg Duggan and the City of Gosnells drainage maintenance team on winning 2 IPWIA WA awards for smart drainage. And while drainage may not be something that is all fluffy and fairy like new buildings and parks, it is still something that every single local government relies on, and so we are reassured to know that our drainage system is effectively managed by Greg and his team, and well done to Director Glover on giving them the freedom to be innovative. And I'll just show you the awards. Here and here. Oh, shucks, don't. Did it all myself. No, it was great to be at that event where we were being recognised as we were, along with other local governments for their work. And next year, I'm sure we will be needing a wheelbarrow. So, moving on, I think that's all I have. Reports of delegates. Councillor Abetz, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I've got 2 things to report on. I attended the Armidale Gosnells Land Care Group on Wednesday the 21st of February, and just in brief, the group is functioning extremely well and very appreciative of the support they get from the city staff, and the volunteers work well together, and I think it's one of the best value for money investments that the city makes in investing in the Armidale Gosnells Land Care Group. So a very harmonious group and working very effectively together. The other thing I just want to report on is last week I attended, together with the Mayor and with Councillor Good, the presentation of a pretend cheque to the youth care who place the chaplains in the schools, and the council presented just under $50,000, which goes towards funding chaplains in our local schools, which doesn't fully fund it, obviously, but it's a significant contribution they're very, very appreciative of. And one of the interesting statistics that the CEO mentioned is that there are over 400 think 80, if I remember correctly, chaplains operating in our state schools, and they actually have over 100 schools that actually want chaplains, but they cannot get enough people to actually be the chaplain. So the chaplaincy service is very, very highly valued by the schools, and so it's great that we, as a local government, can contribute to that service in our schools. They do a great job. And we were also given the accolade of being the local government, as far as youth care is concerned, that we operate on, we're the gold standard they hold up to other local governments, because with other local governments, they've got to kind of knock on the door every year and beg for money, whereas we have a system where we've allocated a certain amount of money and that sort of rolls over every year with the CPI, I think, increase. And so they're very, very appreciative of that ongoing support, and asked us to convey their thanks to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Betts. Any further reports from delegates? Deputy Mayor Hort, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was a busy week last week for State Council, Walga State Council. So last Wednesday we had our strategic forum in the afternoon, as well as our policy meetings. In the strategic forum we had the new Minister for Local Government, the Honourable Hannah Beasley. We had the Commissioner for DFES, and we had the Assistant Director General for DPIRD as well. So discussing all things local government, all things fire response. And from DPIRD's perspective, we had a lengthy discussion around the polyphagous shot hole borer crisis, I'm going to call it. It's really serious. I've got actually quite serious concerns about how it's being managed. I think they're doing as good a job as they can, but I think we've got a really hard slog ahead of us. And we are within the quarantine area in the city of Gosnells. Half of the city of Gosnells falls within the quarantine area of polyphagous shot hole borer. There's been no reported sightings yet, but watching the way it goes, I think it's inevitable, which the whole council discussed, and so did DPIRD, around the challenges that will have for our canopy and many of the trees that we have in the city of Gosnells. And we're already seeing the effects of that in places like Hyde Park and Kings Park, where really mature, hundreds of year-old trees are being removed. Very sad, and hopefully we'll see a response there soon, although I'm not optimistic. That's a conversation for another day, I think. We also had an election priorities workshop that ran for the better part of a day at the State Library, which is a really good opportunity to understand how the levers work leading up to a state election and a federal election, and how we as local government can work more proactively to make sure we're getting great outcomes for our communities right across the local government sphere. So yeah, that's the update from Welga. I'll at the next meeting I'll bring an update as to the actual items that were discussed at the last council meeting when it's been approved. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further reports of delegates? No, thank you. We'll now move on to question time for the public and the receiving of public statements. 6.1 question time, and we have a question from Mrs. Zora Ellis from Quartersway in Langford. Could you come forward with your questions, please? Thank you. I'll ask Director Bradbrook to respond to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm not aware if compliance officers or rangers are dealing with the signs down there. I'm not aware of it being brought to our attention, but I can certainly get them to go and pay a visit and have a look and make sure that people are doing the right thing.
If you had another question, because the staff have guaranteed they'll go and look.
Thank you very much, Greg. So that will be put in place
Yes. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming with your question. There are no other questions this evening, so I will move on to public statements, and we have a public statement from Jackson Tomich from Level 81 William Street, Perth, regarding item 13.2.1, which is on page 3 of the agenda. It's for the development application for a motor vehicle repair and motor vehicle wash on Murdoch Road in Thornley. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Mayor and Councillors. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Jackson Tomich and I'm speaking in relation to agenda item 13.2.1. That's the development application for a motor vehicle repair and motor vehicle wash at 115 Murdoch Road, Thornley, better known as the Forest Lakes Shopping Centre. I'm from Urbis and we are the project's town planner. Firstly, I'd just like to thank the planning officers for their consideration and reporting on the proposal. The purpose of this statement is to express our full support for the officer's recommendation to reiterate key compliance of the proposal and to address how this strategically aligns with the Forest Lakes vision. Having acquired the Forest Lakes Shopping Centre in 2022, Greenpool Capital is seeking immediate investment into the centre to increase and diversify its offering to the local community. This application is one of multiple active actions being pursued for the site. This includes other development applications on vacant land and the Forest Lakes Precinct Structure Plan, of which is referenced in the reporting and will hopefully be in front of Council shortly. Overall, this demonstrates the beginning of a notable pipeline of investment into the City of Gosnells, a commitment to the local Thornley community and the value of this key urban centre. From a technical perspective, both land uses within the application are capable of approval on this site under the local planning scheme and are expected development for a shopping centre environment. Further, the location is in alignment with the as advertised draft Forest Lakes Precinct Structure Plan, being situated in areas earmarked for development within that plan. The proposal has been advertised to the local community with only 3 submissions received. Only one of these was against the proposal. Operationally speaking, this proposal will be unobtrusive to the surrounding catchment. It is noted that in order to accommodate the approval, there will be a net loss of 22 parking bays from the shopping centre as a result. However, there will still be an overall surplus of parking, so there will still be 23 bays more than what's required across the Forest Lakes Shopping Centre. In addition to parking considerations, the proposal is acoustically compliant following a detailed acoustic assessment by the City's Health Department and external professional review. As such, the recommended Condition 3 by the City's planners relating to a noise management plan is noted and accepted. With regards to all other conditions, we're supportive of them all. So I'd just like to, again, extend my thanks to the Mayor, councillors and council staff for their time this evening and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You turn that microphone off. Okay, move forward to the confirmation of minutes. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Dewhurst, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hort. Are there any questions on the minutes? Councillors, if you please cast your vote by way of hands. Show of hands, thank you. Thank you, that has been carried. I'm going to need these so that I could get away with it. No. Moving on to the receiving of petitions and presentations. Are there any? Councillor Dalton, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The City has received a petition requesting an upgrade to Lexington Park Playground, and the reason for the petition is as follows. The playground is run down and some parts of it's dangerous when wet due to the material slippery area. Not all ground is toddler friendly as only certain parts of the play area have padded floors. Would prefer that the ground is padded connecting the 2 play areas for safety reasons, not an all abilities playground. With families having tennis classes and sessions, it would be a plus if parents could watch both the older kids work on their tennis skills as well as providing entertainment for the younger siblings if it was an all-ability playground gated. Love that there is enough parking as well to accommodate both scenarios. And the petition was signed by 4 residents and that the petition be received and a report prepared for council.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Hort's happy to second that. Councillors, if you please cast your vote. Thank you. That has been carried.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Are there any further petitions or presentations? No, thank you. Are there any applications for leave of absence? No. No questions about due notice has been given. Item 11, items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to move item 13.4.1 to the end of the agenda in the interest of the gallery, because we'll have to close the meeting for that item, so we'll move it to the end. Do we need to vote on that? Or I can just make that movement. Yeah. Okay, so we'll do that. Reports. We'll move on to item 13.2.1, the development application for the motor vehicle repair and motor vehicle work wash at 115 Murdoch Road, Thornley. Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Betts, happy to move that. Councillor Williamson to second that. Councillor Betts, do you want to speak to the item? Councillor Williamson? Is there any other debate or questions on the item? Deputy Mayor Hort, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I know there's parts of the community who are probably watching this meeting with interest because this is a significant investment in our local shopping centre. This is my local shopping centre in Thornley Square. I kind of live smack bang between the two. But what really is required is some investment in that shopping centre. We've seen a little bit over time, and so I think it's welcome to see this here. It is with some hesitation that I first approached this development application, because it's actually quite a functional car park, that part of the shopping centre. It does get very busy at Forest Lake Shopping Centre, and so to lose such a large part of the parking lot did give me some concern. I think it'll be managed well. It looks to me like the shopping centre management are really keen to make sure that they're good contributors to our local neighbourhood, and so I'm confident that this will go the right way, and I'm looking forward to welcoming this new business into Thornley. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hort. Is there any further debate or questions on this item? No, councillors, if you could please cast your vote. Thank you. Thank you. That has been carried.
Mayor Lyons,
Yes, Councillor
I
Good.
need to be excused from this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Good. Councillor Good spoke to me earlier about this, and that's fine. Thank you, Councillor Good. Moving on to 13.2.2, the development application and extension to the warehouse at 33 Clifford Street in Maddington. Can I get a mover, Deputy Mayor Hort, to move this? Councillor Williamson to second it. Deputy Mayor Hort, do you have anything to Councillor Williamson? Anybody else? Councillor Dewhurst, thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I just talk in support of this. I would still love to, once this has been developed, it's probably the biggest Bunnings we've got in Australia, but I'll still love to get in there and do some shopping one day, so perhaps you can pull a few strings with the CEO to get us in there to, with a cart. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst. Any further debate or questions on this item? No, councillors, if you could please cast your vote. Thank you. Thank you, that has been carried. Moving on, item 13.3.1, the proposed extension of the lease of part of Lot 3 Stalker Road, Gosnells, the Gosnells over to the Telstra Corporation Limited. Can I get a mover? Councillor Islam to move that, seconded by Councillor Dalton. Councillor Islam, do you want to talk to this?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Dalton. No, anybody else? No, thank you. If you could please cast your votes. Thank you. Thank you, that has been carried. 13.3.2, the proposed extension of the lease of part of Lot 91 Holmes Street, Huntingdale, to the Gosnells Archers Incorporated. Can I get a mover? Councillor Dewhurst to move that. Councillor Baines to second that. Councillor Dewhurst, Councillor Baines. Anyone? Thank you. No, please cast your vote. Thank you, that has been carried. Moving on to item number 13.5.1, the tender for 2023 Park Horticultural Chemical Application. Can I get a mover for this, please? Councillor McDonald to move that, and Councillor Betts to second that. Councillor McDonald, did you want to speak to that? Councillor Betts? No? Anybody else? No? Thank you. If you could please cast your vote. Thank you, that has been carried. Oh, my favourite item. 13.5.2, the proposal to make the City of Gosnells Cat Amendment Local Law 2023. Can I get a mover for this? Councillor Betts to move it, Councillor Deputy Mayor Hort to second it. Councillor Betts, would you like to speak to the item? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I speak, obviously, seeing I've moved it, I'm in favour of the staff recommendation, and I think the staff make the very valid point in the report that it seems odd the Department of Local Government is suggesting that we don't have the power to actually make laws relating to cats in on Crown land or the bush forever and the reserves that aren't actually vested in the city. As I mentioned in the workshop, I was in Parliament at the time when this piece of legislation went through, and because I was a member for Southern River, we had with the catcheries down there, I was quite involved in talking with everybody about the law, and the intent of the Act is very clear that local governments can make laws regarding the movement of cats, particularly that aspect of sensitive environmental areas. If you take bush forever out, and if you take parks out that are river edges that are not actually vested in the city, it kind of defeats the purpose of this Act. And so it's rather odd that the department gave that advice, and the Delegated Legislation Committee, as the report points out, has actually allowed local laws to define areas which are not under the control of the local government in the past. So it just seems very unusual. So I think it's worth a try of pushing this through and see what happens. And if the Delegated Legislation Committee were to not allow it, it would actually be inconsistent with some of the decisions that they've made earlier. And the Section 43(1) of the Act, Section 42 rather, says that the local government is able to make laws regarding cats within their district, and those parks and bush forever areas, they are part of our district. You can't excise those. There's nothing in the Act to suggest that they're not part of it. So I'd encourage everyone to support the staff recommendation, and let's push it forward and see what happens. And if by any chance the Delegated Legislation Committee were to move a recommendation to the Legislative Council to disallow it, I really think it's time then that we lobbied the Legislative Councillors to to reject the motion that's put up by the Deleg Committee, and that this local law could stand. So we might be in for a little bit of a fight, but we'll see what happens. It's worth a cat fight.
Deputy Mayor Hort, seconder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I say anything, I just wanted to ask two questions to get the timeline right in my mind. So if we are to approve this tonight, and I hope we will, what's the timeline for it actually coming into effect? And the second question probably ties into it. When will our cat management facility be up and running?
Dr. Brad Brooke will answer your questions, I'm sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The local law would come into effect 14 days after it's published in the Gazette, so we'll try and get that published next week, and it'll come into effect 2 weeks after that. It'll then go through the review process of Parliament, and they'll do what they do with it, but it is in effect until Parliament rules otherwise. In terms of the cat management facility, I'm pleased to let you know that the cat condos are installed. There's a couple of issues with them that need to be fixed. They were damaged in transit, so once those are dealt with, we should be open within the next, I'd love to think within the next 14 days that we should be ready to roll with that and have an opening.
Beautiful timing, Madam Mayor. It's all coming together. It feels like it was 4 years ago where we first started discussing cat management in this council chambers. I think it's about 20 councillors that have been involved in one stage or another through 3 different sets of councils to get it to this point. It's been a robust discussion. It's been a lengthy one. I didn't even think I was going to talk to it tonight. I've talked about cats so much in this chambers, but I just want to thank everyone who's been involved, who's championed this along the way, who's taught me along the way, especially members of the community who've taught me a lot about cats, something I never thought I'd be so passionate about. But it's clearly something that the community's passionate about, which is why we're seeing this manifest into our first iteration of the cat law, which said, hey, we're not okay with them roaming around the Brixton Street wetlands and the Mary Carroll wetlands and these highly sensitive areas. We've seen investment now in a cat management facility and how we're going to manage that. And then this step, which is so important. We invest millions of dollars so many hours of our staff and volunteer time in bringing our environment up to scratch. It's not done. We've not done great by it as humanity by looking after our rivers and our wetlands. And we've done so much to get so far, but cats still continue to eat native wildlife in our environmentally sensitive areas. So this is not the silver bullet that's going to fix it, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. So councillors, please support this, support our environmental areas, so hopefully we can continue to flourish as an environmental hotspot in our metropolitan area. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hort. Is there any further debate or questions on this item? No. Councillors, if you'd like to cast your vote. Thank you. Thank you. That has been carried. Yes. Moving on to item 14.1, the request for a policy to be imposed on permits. Can I get a mover? Councillor Dewhurst to move this. Do you need a seconder yet or after you speak? Yes, Councillor Dewhurst. Sorry?
You will need a second.
After he speaks to it or before? We've done one for a while. Need a seconder for Councillor Dewhurst. Councillor McDonald. Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Do you want me to read I'm sure everyone's read it. Anyone object if I don't read it? I'll just go into it.
Go into it. It's a matter of public record. It is on the city website as well as, yes, you can give a brief overview of what it's about, I guess. Yeah.
Yep, no worries at
Thank
all. Firstly, I'd just like to bring up the fact is that the request for the motion is the policy to be developed to detail certain conditions to be imposed on permits for the use of the city property. Councillors, I was going to go with a totally different tact on tonight's argument, but I've decided I'll go this way. The reason I want to bring a policy in there is because 2 weeks ago we were thrust into a position where our staff had nowhere to go. They did not have a policy because of the protest that was going to occur. So I've just tried to fill that void in developing such a policy. And then the way it went during the night, I got really disheartened that as a council that we didn't find that there was any risks whatsoever and that we could literally ignore anything that would happen and we'd be fine.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor,
And,
point of order. That's
Councillor, could sit down while Councillor Williamson expresses her point of order. Thank you.
so section 7.18, adverse reflection on the council's motives.
I agree with that. Dewhurst, be mindful of what you're saying because we've made the decision and now you're talking against the decision basically with what you've said.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. But Madam Mayor, this is about freedom of speech. And I'm not going to stand here again like I did 2 weeks ago and have people objecting from that side of the room just for the sake of objecting. Okay, try and put me off the strand. So I find that very unethical. So if I can continue, I take what you're saying, but I find it very, very wrong.
Okay, Councillor Dewhurst, but you would know that your fellow councillors have a right to call a point of order on you if they see fit to do so. So it would be good if you didn't give them reason to call a point of order on you.
Of course, but I also see there's a bit of a game as well.
Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst.
So thank you. So let's. So what we're doing is, and the reason is I was trying to fill this void, and have what occurred was very disheartening. So I had a week to reflect on it, and in my own job, I working with a client, and they're in court at the moment, and I was able to get hold of a KC who was there. We were out for dinner, and I actually asked him about this very thing about if we did not have a local law for this, people could just have their protest when they want to do. He's the one that actually said, like I said in the workshop, you can't behave like the three wise monkeys. You can't put your hands over your eyes to ignore it. You can't put your hands over your ears to ignore it. You can't put your hand over your mouth. The fact is that there is a risk when you're going to hold such protests, and the risk has been raised, and we've chosen to ignore it. And anyone who's sat up in front of a court will understand that you will be picked to pieces over this. But look, let's go back a bit further. So, where I'll start. So we've got a foreshadowed motion, we've got an amendment to the motion, and we've also got a foreshadowed motion to basically just say that that we amend the local law.
Hold one sec, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst.
You know, it says to amend the local law, so we're just going to let protests and at any time they want to go down to Pioneer Park and the town centre. Now, let me give you a bit of history about the Pioneer Park. Do you know, many, many years ago, before I was even on council, former Mayor Searle, former Mayor, I'm trying to think of his name. Bear with me, I've got his name, Stubbs. They went to Canberra together, they kicked in the door of the, I'm assuming it was of Paul Keating, and they walked away with $7 million. And they had $3.5 million each. And on the proposals of what they're going to do with that $3.5 million each was to spend $500,000 on the amphitheatre to make that accessible for every, and a safe space and accessible to every resident within the city of Gosnells. And I don't think this is in the spirit of us receiving that money back then. The reason also the people around the table have heard that, well, we'll just let the police make the decision because they have to go for a permit then. Do you know why the police ask for a permit? It's because it's rated as high risk. The protests and rallies, no matter what they are rated as high risk. That's why you need a permit. And that's why we should be looking at those risks as well and also trying to mitigate them as well. Why do you think the police ask for permits for people to have parties at their houses? Hey, you can register with the police if you want to. That's an opt-in. But they don't make you have permits. And, you know, councillors, this is just about, you know, it's a COA. It really is. You know, we need to cover ourselves in regards to this. Now, I understand that I know the councillors are just want this just to more or less just go away, and but I can't in good heart and in good logic of actually just to ignore the fact is if people are going to come and protest in our city, no matter what it be, there's always someone at the end of that protest. They're always going to hate somebody, and I personally would want to see some controls put on that. Safeguard our residents, safeguard our city. I mean, the protest that happened, which wasn't really successful, not that as many people come as we thought that people thought they'd come. I mean, we gave that to that area there to them for free, but there was a cost to the city, $1,600. That's what it costs. I know it's only $1,600, and it's probably, you know, Mrs. Jones's house, half of her rates for the year gone towards that. But why should we be making now, and that's a very minimal cost, but why should our ratepayers have to fork out for people who majority don't live in our city to come and protest? I don't see that, particularly free and without any mitigation strategies put on them, as we do for every other event that holds a lot of people. So, councillors, I'll talk and we'll have a lot more debate about this. But the reason this was brought up is because we had a void of a policy, and that void came across to this policy here. I mean, the idea of this policy, which is not dictative to telling the CEO or anyone else what to do. It's not directing the staff to this is exactly what you will do. A policy is about them formulating a policy, which normally happens. Then the policy will come out to councillors for comment. Then we'll ask for a workshop, and then we may workshop it 2 or 3 times until we get it right. And out of that workshop, that might...
Councillor Dewhurst, you'll have to move for extra time if you need extra time.
I've got about a minute. I've got a minute. I'm happy to sit down and wait for that minute.
You can have extra time. I move that Councillor Dewhurst has extra time. Seconder, Councillor Deputy Mayor Hort. You vote for that. Thank you. Yes, that's been carried. Carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Now lost my train of thought. So I might as well sit down. No, So this is not about being divisive in our community. This is about protecting ratepayers, our community, and also councillors, and particularly our CEO. This is about developing a policy. I mean, during this policy stage, anything can happen because we just do absolutely crazy things in this city for the benefit of the community, and we might turn around and say, you know what, we are going to change local law, or we're going to do this, going to do that. That may come out of the workshops for the policy. But I don't want to be seen as it's directing or mandating and that's why I haven't put a heap of stuff into this to the executive staff. But one thing I did ask the executive staff is through the Director of Business Services. I did ask him and said, we need to get legal opinion on this because everyone seems to have their own legal opinion around this table, and we need to go and actually have a talk to somebody. And that legal opinion needs to be extremely broad to cover all aspects. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst. Councillor McDonald, did you want to speak to the item? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd also like to speak in support of the motion. I think the motion is essentially due diligence. On the last occasion when this subject matter came up, my reservations were in part due to a lack of time, and I felt we were being rushed because we had very little time to consider the matter. This motion has similarly arrived today. I saw it for the first time a couple of hours ago. I don't wish to dispense with it so quickly. I don't think it's too much to ask to give the issue some closer consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. I just would like to move that I have a foreshadowed motion, should this one not be successful, and that is to request for a... No, that's not it. This is on the title of what it is, and the Council requests the Chief Executive Officer to prepare amendments to Council's local government property local law to specify local government property such as Pioneer Park Amphitheatre and the Gosnells Town Square as areas where protest rallies and similar events may occur without the need to obtain a permit for the following reasons. Freedom of speech and association, important rights in a democratic society, and the city should not be seen as to be interfering with those with the rights by requiring a person to obtain the city's approval for events such as protests and rallies to occur in public spaces. I understand that it is possible to amend the city's local law to specify particular local government properties where protest rallies and the like could be held without the requirement to obtain a permit from the city. Do I get a seconder here? No. So should your item be lost, Councillor Dewhurst, I would then seek a seconder on this item. So carry on with the debate. Is there anyone that would like to speak against Councillor Dewhurst's motion? Councillor Williamson, and then, thank you, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be speaking against this motion because I have some fundamental problems with the fact that we're proposing a policy be drafted without any actual advice around that policy. So Councillor Dewhurst has mentioned that it's a broad policy, that it's a draft, and that he's not imposing any conditions. However, there's 12 conditions actually listed on this proposed motion, and it says the conditions to be imposed on the permits. So anyone that would be reading this would take the interpretation that Councillor Dewhurst's intention and the intention of this motion is to impose these 12 conditions on anyone that was holding a protest within the city, which was considered to be a function under the local laws. The reason I have such a big problem with a policy that restricts where protests can occur and applies onerous conditions to that to the policy to allow a permit to be issued is that it stops smaller groups being able to protest. It stops mum and dads, it stops our ordinary residents being able to come and protest against an issue which impacts them personally. I personally have had, the reason I came to council was through an issue in the community. I was part of a group that just like-minded parents came together. We saw a problem and we tried to get together to stand up for what we thought was right because we were being impacted by a decision that was made by council and other government bodies that was going to have a negative impact on us. So we didn't end up protesting, but the thing was that was an option to us. And as City of Gosnells residents, I would hope that anyone that does have a problem with one of our decisions or does have a problem with a state or government issue, that they know that they still have those rights in the City of Gosnells to form together to be able to uphold a peaceful protest. So I think this policy is really quite dangerous in limiting those Australian freedoms that we all come to appreciate. I also have the concern that by imposing the conditions, that means that our staff then have to make assessments and judgments on all of those 12 conditions there. When we're assessing and judging those, we then become a party to those. If we approve them and something does go wrong, we're now accepting additional legal liabilities. So all in all, I think the best way to go is to seek advice, because we don't have that advice now, but definitely we can't go forward and ask the staff to have a policy put in place based on Councillor Dewhurst's lawyer buddy that's provided some advice to him. It's something that for us to do our due diligence and to meet our obligations, we actually have to have advice, or we need to take advice from the city staff that know the exact circumstances that we're trying to deal with and know our local laws. So I am speaking against this motion, and I hope the foreshadowed motion actually comes up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Is anyone speaking for Councillor Dewhurst's motion? Councillor Betts had his hand up to speak first. Thank you, Councillor Betts.
Madam Mayor, before I speak, I'd just like to ask a question. Councillor Dewhurst mentioned the cost of $1,600 with the little rally that was held. Can someone provide information as to what that cost actually was?
Sorry, Director Glover, would you be able to respond to that, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The cost was $1,519. Just around mid-900s was the traffic management. We had originally proposed to use our own trailers, pre-warning trailers, but unfortunately most of those are in the shop and we weren't able to use, so we had to hire those to bring them in. We also thought it prudent to arrange for the public toilets to be cleaned in preparation for a lot of people in town. It's something we would normally do, but it was actually specifically because this project was on. And also we made sure that all the bins were empty before people got there, and that's really about making sure we didn't end up with a mess in the park.
Thanks. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I've just got a point of clarification. There was additional cost to the city, if you'd like to ask the rest of the directors.
Councillor Dewhurst, you've quoted the 1,600. The question's been asked and answered, so we'll move on. Well, it has. Councillor Dewhurst, carry on. You're satisfied with the answer? Deputy Mayor Hort has a question. If you want to ask a question in a minute, you can. Thank you. Did you want to speak to it now? Sorry. Up, down, up, down. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. I appreciate the sentiment of Councillor Dewhurst in wanting some kind of policy, some kind of clarity as to where we're moving with this. And I think it's definitely something we need to workshop and process as to how do we handle rallies, protest rallies, that type of event within the city. But having been involved in organising different rallies at different times, including at Parliament House and so on, the points that are listed in the motion are actually things that we've never had to do in organising any rally that I've ever been involved in. Number of ablution facilities to be provided. We've never, ever had to do that. Provision of potable water. Hey, people want a bottle of water, they bring it. First aid arrangements. When we have a big one, we generally do have somebody, a medical person, and we say, look, over there is the first aid if anybody needs it. That's one thing we do have. Security arrangements. Usually the security is provided by the police or the in the Parliament or wherever you are. And the information about the use of noise amplification equipment, well, you're governed by the environmental laws. Information about temporary structures proposed to be installed. Well, generally you're not allowed to install any temporary structures for any rallies, unless, certainly the ones I've been involved in. Generators, you're allowed to put a generator, and even at Parliament House, you're allowed to set up a little generator because they don't provide electricity. we've never had to do a traffic management plan. The requirement to prepare emergency evacuation plan, everybody run. That's probably what happens. And because of the implied right to political expression that the High Court's ruled is implied in our Constitution, it does not say that you only have that right if you have public liability insurance. You do not need to have public liability insurance to organise a rally. There's no such obligation. And proof of a permit having been issued by police. Again, one of the interesting things that may be of interest to you is when I've organised rallies at Parliament House well in advance, and we do that with the Parliament House security people, the police are informed, etc., etc. If some other group turns up 10 minutes before we get there on the day, even though we've booked it well in advance, there's absolutely nothing we can do about it because it's their right to be there to do what they want to do. The fact that we have a permit is more about being a good citizen in the sense that you don't have two rallies at the same time. It's to try and have good order. But if somebody wants to be disruptive, there's nothing you can actually do about it. So I just think there's a lot more. This motion suggests that there is a whole lot of things to be in a policy which I really don't think need to be there. But that's not to say that we shouldn't have a policy. And I think probably the proposed foreshadowed motion perhaps encapsulates what needs to be done perhaps a little better than the motion that's before us. So I'm not I appreciate the intent of Councillor Dewhurst's motion, but I think it goes into far too much detail and I prefer the foreshadowed motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Betts. Is anybody else that would like to? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hort.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to clarify something that came out of Councillor Dewhurst's original speech, and I just want to make sure I'm really clear on it. There was mention of, obviously we didn't charge for the original protest. Would any of this preclude charging? Like if this was to get up, or in the current setting that we've got, if someone wanted to book and it was a rally, I haven't read anything to suggest that we wouldn't charge, and I just need to understand that.
Thank you. I'll ask the CEO to respond. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, there are certain open space areas that we charge for, and if somebody wanted to use those spaces, we'd look to charge them for it, but that's not all spaces, and I don't see anything changing that.
Okay, anybody else to speak on this item? Councillor Dewhurst, do you be question? Yes.
To the Business Director of Services, how much did the weekend cost us over the weekend for that protest, please?
Councillor Dewhurst, Director, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the costs that Director of Infrastructure gave you were the costs for infrastructure, but I did have rangers attend during the day as well, so there was some staff costs in terms of going down and having a look what was going on to see if there were any issues that we need to deal with. So there was probably another $100 odd worth of staff time in monitoring that as well.
Further questions, Councillor Dewhurst, or are you closing?
Let me finish off.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, sorry, unless anyone else had anything else? No? No, you're right. Please
Okay,
close.
thanks very much, councillors. I'm sorry, Councillor Betts made no sense to me because he's saying that we should be talking about having a policy, but he won't support the idea of the policy, but he'll support the foreshadowed motion which says they don't need a policy down there. So I don't understand that. And Councillor Williamson's things about local protests, I mean, I did talk about 2 weeks ago local protests. You wouldn't hinder that. But one of the things is what we're saying is that if they got a police permit, that's okay. How many local protests actually go and get a police permit? They don't. So it doesn't preclude people from protesting locally. That's just not right. Because if you want to protest, we've had people protest inside this building here in our council meetings with signs and everything like that. I'm sure they didn't come for a permit, if I can remember. I'm sure they didn't get a police permit. So when we say, oh, if they get a police permit, it's okay, I mean, that's null and void. That's null and void. And the, look, I might be wrong here, right? But I'm just going straight down the line of the mitigation. I'm talking about we need to mitigate the council and the ratepayers and people that are attending there from if any harm comes to them or something goes wrong. I mean, no, probably not out of neglect and out of fault or anger or anything like that, but, you know, something could break, whatever. What have we done as a city to actually mitigate it? Because that's what the police do. That's why it's a high risk. That's why they need to get a permit for. You know, I see where this is going, and that's fine. I'll respect the decision of what the councillors want to do or don't want to do. But, I mean, Madam Mayor, you talk about freedom of speech and association, people's rights to a democratic society, which is great, but this foreshadowed motion actually stops what I'm trying to get is actually freedom of speech, freedom of advocacy, freedom of us all coming together to actually talk about a policy. And it's just denying that. It's taking that away. To me, it's quite, you know, it's quite hypocritical. Can you get that word out for me? Hypocritical. Thank you. So, and Councillor Bett says that these motions, these points, in regards to in this motion, I know I've just listed everything that I could possibly think of, but I know for a fact when you did drafting up a policy and working with people, you think this is null and void, that's null and void, that's null and void. I know there's things in here that we'd never go for, but I just wanted to get people thinking, you know, and I haven't put this policy up for the staff, as Councillor Williamson said, for the staff to go write a policy and implement it. That's not what it was, because we don't do that in Council of the City of Gosnells. What we do is someone raises a policy, it goes out to councillors, and ultimately it comes to a workshop. You know, if there's people want to talk about it. Councillors, I can't get away strongly enough to suggest to you, please take the experience that I've had in legal arguments in law and again, my ex-police officer friend over there, you know, was saying, let's do this right. Let's communicate it. Let's talk about this. Let's not shut this down and just put our hands over our mouths, over our ears and over our eyes and just hope it goes away. In fact, I'd be very surprised if a protest ever comes back to the City of Gosnells, because it wasn't very successful at all. But this thing about, you know, stopping local protests, that's just not right. That's not right, because you don't get police permits for local protests. You don't come and get permits for us for local protests. You come in here and you kick our doors in, and like people do, and we end up throwing them out if they get too rowdy. I mean, that's what the protest is about here. So I'm just asking for a fair go for all of us to consider the merit of looking at a policy or not. The workshop may come out, the fact is we don't have a policy. But don't shut it down, councillors. Don't shut it down. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst. Could councillors vote if they're in support of the motion? Thank you, councillors. That has been lost. We now move on to the foreshadowed motion, and I seek a seconder for the foreshadowed motion. Councillor Baines, happy to second that, and now I will speak to it. Councillor Dewhurst, the intent of this wasn't just to shut down what you were doing, and I understand that you have got the best interests of the city at heart when you bring the policy forward. However, upon my conversations with the CEO and the director, who we pay a significant amount to know their stuff, I've asked them the direct question of what would be the best way to move forward with this whilst mitigating the risk to the city, and the CEO assures me that the best way to move forward would be to change the local law, as I've suggested, in that we allow a space to have the rally and that we don't put all these conditions on it, because then we're monitoring it and we open ourselves up to further risk by having all of those conditions imposed on this. Now, I understand you may not agree with that, but I will be happy to take the city staff advice on this, as they have many years' experience between them, and that is why I have put this foreshadowed motion up to move on with it, so that we have a resolution rather than kicking it around for another 3 or 4 months. That will probably come back to changing the local law at the end of that. So we would skip those steps and just move straight to changing the local law to allow for protests within the city, should they ever want to come again to protest here. The seconder was Councillor Baines. Would you like to speak to this item? Anyone else that would like to speak to this foreshadowed motion? Councillor Dewhurst, thank you.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. The pure fact is that if we change local law and we're providing a space for people to protest, we accept the risk. That's how law works in Australia. Would Madam Mayor...
Sorry, Councillor Dewhurst, I might just get a clarification on what you've said about how law works in Australia, and I would wonder from the CEO, from your perspective, is that how the law works in Australia?
Madam Mayor, there are risks in everything we do. We've got risks by the fact that we run facilities. We've got land which is used by people. And because we're a local government which has got effectively very deep pockets, if somebody wants to take action against us, they can try and bring action, and that has occurred in numerous cases. So we are always at risk of legal action. But I think that our standing would be pretty strong if we're not sort of given authorisation or approval.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I didn't understand the CEO as a lawyer.
I didn't understand you were.
To give legal opinion, but at least I'll go ask the people that are. So, but anyway, my second point on it is that with the Mayor as the person that brings us full shadow motion, would you be looking at putting an amendment to that to actually, for us to go seek legal opinion? Go ahead with this, but also to seek legal opinion and see how we stand at the same time. Would you agree to that? I'd be happy with that. I'd be happy with that.
If you would like to propose an amendment to my foreshadowed motion, that would be up to you.
Okay, well, I'll propose then an amendment to your foreshadowed motion for that, to seek legal opinion, because I'll cover all the spaces all the way through there. So I'll do that. Now,
Do you want a seconder for that?
I'll propose it at the end. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll propose one then. And the other thing is, when we decide to change the local law...
Sorry. Don't mean to keep putting...
No, he's playing games with me. Yeah. I'm joking.
I think once you mention amendment, you should move forward with it and get a seconder for it and then speak to your amendment and then come back to your other debate.
Okay. Okay, so have you got the amendment things out, Director Bradbrook?
So your amendment is that you seek the city to take
clarification.
legal advice when they're drafting the local law amendment.
Yeah.
Yes. And we would bring that back to council before we've got the first version. So happy to do that.
Is there a seconder for Councillor Dewhurst's amendment? Does everybody understand what the amendment is? Can we get a seconder?
No, don't worry about that then. Okay.
CEO has said that we would do it regardless, so...
Yep, rightio. So how long, when we decide to change local law to actually comes into effect? Is that straight away?
Mr Bradbrook?
No, there's a significant period. It's got to be drafted, it's got to come to council, it's then got to be advertised for 12 weeks, it's got to come back to council. And then, as Director Bradbrook said, with the CAT local law, it's once you finally endorse it, it's 14 days after it's put in the Gazette, which is a few days after the council meeting. So if you add that up, it's probably close to 4.5 months if we move quickly.
Thank you.
Oh, that's reasonable. Okay, no worries. I thought it'd be like 12 months or something like that. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst. Councillor McDonald? Oh, hang on, I'll see if there's anyone speaking. Are you speaking for or against? Okay, anyone for the... thank you, Councillor Abetz.
Madam Mayor, I just want to say Councillor Dewhurst was correct when I used the word policy for this, that I actually used the wrong word. My intent, when I used that word policy, I meant it more in the broad sense of how we go about dealing with a situation, not a formal policy. So I did use the wrong word, Councillor Dewhurst. I take that. What I find attractive about this motion is that it actually copies or mimics what I understand to be the situation with the City of Perth, where they don't actually issue permits for rallies and things. You simply have to get the police permit and then that's it. I think this process would be the best way forward, and it just keeps things very, very simple. Thank you.
Councillor McDonald next, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, as I mentioned before, I really feel like I'm being rushed to make a decision here. I'm all for good, expedient work at council, but from what I've read, 14.1 is seeking a draft policy, and I think even Councillor Williamson agreed that this is a draft. and it says on it a policy could be prepared for council's consideration. So all of the points that are listed there, they're not set in stone. They're not being adopted as a consequence of this agenda item. I think that the proposed foreshadowed motion actually shuts down what it argues it's trying to protect, free speech. I don't accept the proposition that to formulate policy about such matters is interfering with anyone's rights. Rather, such a policy may protect such rights and provide them with structure and protection. Free speech is not confined to rallies and protests. Free speech extends to elected councillors who have a duty to all the city's residents to discuss such matters in workshops. This policy presents as a policy itself and has been presented very late, in fact later than the main agenda item. And for these reasons I cannot support the foreshadowed motion.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Councillor Lloyd, thank you.
I wanted to speak on this because the last week or last fortnight where we were discussing the protest that was brought upon us quite quickly, one of the things that was brought up, I believe, that it was the first protest that was that had asked for a permit. Can I just quickly seek clarification?
Yes, I believe you're correct. Thank you.
Yes. And so I decided to do a little bit of a search on Facebook and search Gosnells protest to see whether there were actually any protests before within the city of Gosnells. And to my surprise, I located two that just from Facebook posts. One was shows a photo right outside the front of our lovely building here for the Brixton Street wetlands protest, which was in September 2018. And another one was a group from the Tamale community, which from the photos looks like they had 50 or 60, maybe even 100 people. You can't see the depth, just down here in our park. And they were full on with signs, and there's actually a video. It was quite a robust protest, I'd say probably in line with the protest that was down there. And they looked like they did it with no form of requirement from us. And so I thought it was really important to show that irrespective of whether we put our hands on anything, that these things are going to happen and we should be as hands-off as possible. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Any further debate on this foreshadowed? Deputy Mayor Hort, thank you.
Look, I'm in support of the foreshadowed motion. I listened really carefully to both sides of the argument because I really didn't have a strong opinion coming into this, to be honest. I really didn't know where this was going to go. I don't accept all the things that Councillor Dewhurst, as I felt, said about us as a council. I just want to put that on the record. I think we do take this really seriously, and I look forward to seeing what comes forward in this local law. Because one thing that I would like to flesh out when it comes to back to council is how do we incorporate having a police permit as a part of this approvals process, because it's not required. You don't have to always have a police permit. The police permit's really in place so that, you know, the police can't get involved and kind of disperse you and all that kind of stuff. Again, I'm not an expert. That's just what I understand in the Act. So it's really important to have, I think that's something the council would value as having a part of that local law. I think the policy was a step too far, but I'm interested to see what it looks like when it comes back to council. So I'm in support of it, of this foreshadowed motion, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Hort, is there any further debate or questions on this item? Question. Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst.
All right, I'm getting a bit tired. I had a big day today.
So we all.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll finish very quickly. Just so I got some clarification on what Deputy Mayor Hort said. He said that he's looking forward for us to have a robust discussion in regards to forming a policy. He's mentioned policy 3 times, local law. I mean,
I've had a longer day.
You've had a longer
Councillor
day. You probably have,
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
You probably
Local
have.
law.
So he's clarified that he meant local law.
Yeah, okay. So he's clarified local law, Norwich law. Thank you. Just seems to me, Madam Mayor, it's going through the same process.
Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst. Any further? I'll just close the debate, and I just wanted to make it clear that bringing forward this foreshadowed motion has, as I said, has been done in conjunction with discussions with the CEO and the Director of Governance and Business Services, which governance comes under. And I don't want the councillors to think that I'm negating the experience of experienced police officers in here and what could happen if something like this happens. I'm taking advice, as all councillors should, from the staff, as we are required to do under the Act. So that is why I brought this foreshadowed motion forward, and I respect the fact that you've had many years as a police officer and that Councillor McDonald has as well. This has been done with advice from the staff. So I ask that you support the foreshadowed motion. Thank you. If you could please cast your votes. Thank you. Thank you, that has been carried. We now move on to, there's no urgent business, but we do have a confidential matter that we would need to vote to close the meeting. Can I get a mover for that, please? Deputy Mayor Hort to move that and Councillor Lloyd to second that. Councillors, will you please cast your vote on closing the meeting? Thank you, that has been carried. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming along this evening. You are welcome to wait, of course. I don't know how long we'll be.